Do not love half lovers. Do not entertain half friends. Do not indulge in works of the half-talented. Do not live half a life, and do not die a half-death. If you choose silence, then be silent. When you speak, do so until you're finished.
Jibran Khalil Jibran is another great interpreter of the human soul who addresses our hearts and minds through his whispering prose, visionary poems, and dreamy paintings. Indeed, he still speaks to us like a true modern writer-philosopher whose sudden illuminations, bathed in spiritual perfume and colored with the sunlight of wisdom, touch us deeply and thoroughly after more than 100 years into the first publication of his finest literary masterpieces. Jibran's literary style, which broke away from the classical schools of writing, pioneered a new romantic trend in Arabic and perhaps in American literature, relying vehemently on burning emotions and intellectual idealism. Indeed, Arabic literary modernism, in particular, owes much to Jibran's prophetic art, as many critics would agree, and the Arab Renaissance in poetry and prose would not have been possible without his contribution. Khalil Jibran was born on January the 6th, 1883 in Pshiri, Mount Lebanon. He came from a humble background and could not continue his elementary education during his childhood due to dismal poverty. However, he did study the Bible, which had a great impact on his literary career and style in particular in so many different ways. During the Ottoman rule of the region during the late 19th century, Jibran's father was arrested by local authorities for alleged embezzlement, and his family property was confiscated, or rather taken away by force.
سكن الليل وفي ثوب السكون تختبي الأحلام.
When his father was released in 1894, his mother had already made up her mind to emigrate to the United States. On June 25th, 1895, his mother took the 12-year-old Khalil, his younger sisters Mariana and Sultana, and his elder half-brother Peter to the city of New York. To support her family, she had to work as a seamstress, peddler, selling lace and linens door to door from daybreak to sunset. Right after his family's arrival, Khalil Jibran was enrolled in a preparatory school on September 30th, 1895. He was placed in a special class for immigrants to learn English. The next couple of years were very tough on him, if not one of the most challenging in his personal life as a young aspiring writer. One of his sisters died of tuberculosis at the age of 14. The following year, his brother Peter died of the same illness, whereas his mother passed away due to cancer. He was left with his sister Mariana, who would take care of him, working as a laborer in a dressmaker's shop. Inspired by 19th century impressionistic and symbolic painters, Jibran held his first art exhibition in Boston in 1904 at Fred Day's studio. In the exhibition, he met an educated lady by the name of Mary Elizabeth Haskell, who was working as a school teacher. She expressed her utmost admiration of his watercolor drawings. Their friendship ever since, which lasted until his death, had a great impact on him. Although Mary Haskell was 10 years older than Jibran, the two became close friends, and their cooperation helped cement the author's reputation in America as a major romantic author. She was among the few to play a significant role in his personal and professional career. In the year 1908, Haskell and others convinced Jibran to join an art school in Paris, where he would study for 2 years, during which he perfected his techniques as a painter and met dozens of European intellectuals. Jibran embraced symbolism in Paris and came to know the literary and philosophical elite of his time, including such figures as the Irish poet William Butler Yeats and the famous psychologist Carl Jung, each of whom he met and painted a profile of. However, throughout his life, symbolists such as William Blake had the greatest influence on him, who painted more than 700 pictures, watercolors, and drawings. Blake, through his sketches and water paintings attached to his songs of innocence and songs of experience, in particular fascinated Jibran. No doubt he was familiar with some of Blake's poetry and drawings during his early years in Boston. As one critic has put it, their reading of the Bible, their rebellion against church corruption, and their socio-political visions were rather similar. This is not to suggest that Jibran was imitating Blake, but to affirm that he found the support and confirmation for his early doctrine's romantic tendencies. No doubt they both shared a total rejection of rationalism in favor of a glorification of imagination, let alone that both poets shared a prophetic and apocalyptic view of the world around them. Jibran started his career writing narrative texts in Arabic, but after 1918 he chose English as his favorite medium of expression. His first book, The Madman, was published in 1918. It was made up of witty aphorisms and original parables, borrowing from the Bible, haunting cadences and lulling echoes. Jibran soon joined the New York Pen League, also known as the Immigrant Poets, which included other notable literary figures like Amin al-Rayhani, Ilya Abu Madi, and Mikhail Naimi, all of whom recognized Jibran's genius and originality, and somehow affected by his language as he did by theirs. Jibran's writings dealt with a wide range of themes, most notably individual redemption, social freedom, and spiritual emancipation. Yet love, divine or human, figures forth as a dominant force in most of his poems and short stories. He was a strong advocate of feminist emancipation through the sheer power of love in a society dominated by patriarchal thoughts and outdated conventions, as his sentimental letters to the famous Palestinian feminist writer May Ziadeh showed. In these letters, Jibran was driven by an astonishing desire to glorify chaste platonic love and call relentlessly for individual freedom. Khalil Jibran and May Ziadeh knew one another from the letters they exchanged and from a deep admiration for each other's writings. It was a kind of mutual fascination based on literary and personal grounds. Their correspondence endured a lifetime and entered the Arab collective consciousness as a great legendary love story. Their letters reveal the eloquence and sublimity of Jibran's rhetoric, which is both profoundly subjective and emotionally evocative. Jibran's fascinating revelations in the letters unmask a moving insight into the fluctuations of a human heart. Indeed, Ziadeh and Jibran were both possessed with a romantic spirit from childhood and were both deeply influenced by such romantic writers like William Blake, Lord Byron, and Shelley. These influences are evident in the majority of their works. Like Jibran, May Ziadeh revealed an everlasting nostalgia for transcendental purity, exhibiting vibrant and sensitive attachment to what Emerson calls the oversoul. Like Jibran too, she showed an inclination towards a mystical unification with God's other holy book, namely nature. Of this drive to reunite with the music of natural objects, Jibran wrote poems celebrating the most delicate and fragile aspects of a human emotion. As his great lyrical poem, Give Me the Flute and Sing, which was put to music by the Lebanese Al-Rahabina brothers and chanted by the great singer Ferouz, whose angelic voice added more magic to Jibran's fascinating lines. Bring me the flute and sing, for singing is the secret of eternity. And the wailing of the flute remains even after the end of existence. Have you chosen the forest rather than palaces as your refuge? Have you climbed up the creeks and ascended the rocks? Have you bathed in perfume and then dried yourself with sunlight? Have you sipped the wine of dawn from goblets of ether? Bring me the flute and sing, that is the secret of eternity. And the wailing of the flute remains even after the end of life. Have you sat alone at dusk among the grave pines, among their clusters hanging like chandeliers of gold? Have you made the grass your nighttime bed? Have you wrapped yourself in evening air with the sky as your blanket, so that you can allow the future to come and let go of the past? Bring me the flute and sing, so our hearts may be in unison. And the wailing of the flute remains even after the end of all sins. Bring me the flute and sing, forget melodies and their cures. For people are just lines, written but with water.
When love beckons to you, follow him. Though his ways are hard and steep.
In keeping with this mystical Sufi spirit, Jibran wrote his most famous book, The Prophet. which was published in 1923, 1 year after the publication of Eliot's masterpiece The Wasteland and James Joyce's Ulysses. The Prophet included 26 poetic fragments, each of which tackles a different theme. The book became extremely popular after being translated into more than 50 languages. It placed Jibran among the best-selling authors of all time. The Prophet has never been out of print. It is thought to have sold tens of millions of copies. The book is delivered as sermons by a sage called al-Mustapha, who strongly reminds us of nature's prophetic figure in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Some critics suggest that during a certain period of his career, Jibran was fully attached to nature. This was a period of disillusionment and frustration that ended with writing his masterpiece. At that time, the young Jibran was experiencing personal and social difficulties, and his country in particular was yielding under the heavy yoke of the Ottoman Empire. So, a heroic figure like al-Mustapha was timely and had a special appeal to readers across the Arab world. Jibran's hero is made to set sail for his homeland after spending 12 years exiled on an imaginary island, when the people of the island asked him to share his knowledge on the major questions of life, love, family, work, and death. Some of the memorable aphorisms in the book reveal the richness of Jibran's philosophical visions, and some passages were also put to music and chanted by the great Lebanese singer Fairuz, like in her song Al-Mahabba, or Love, taken from the Prophet. On this topic, Jibran says, "Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup." Of children, he says in the same song, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." On beauty, he declares in the same book, "Beauty is an eternity gazing at itself in a mirror, but you are eternity, and you are the mirror."
أولادكم ليس لكم أولادكم أبناء الحياة أولادكم ليس لكم أولادكم أبناء الحياة والحياة لا تقيم في منازل الأمن.
It is worth mentioning that the Prophet was made into a film in 2014.
My name's Mustapha. What's yours?
The full title is Khalil Jibran's The Prophet, which was produced by renowned actress Salma al-Hayek, who also performed the voice work. The production consisted of different directors for each of the film's collective essays. The film had an in-progress preview at the 2014 Cannes Film Festival. In the film, the main hero al-Mustapha is depicted as having conversations ranging in topics from freedom to marriage to parenthood to eating. Jibran's literary language, which broke away from the classical schools, pioneered a new romantic movement in Arabic and even Western literature. His criticism of society and state, his rebellion against the authority, helped shape a new trend in thought. His iconoclastic understanding of God and the Bible betrayed his faith in and love of Jesus, but a negation of Christian hierarchy and its institutions. Instead, he advocated self-will, the overman, and secularism, In the Arab world, Jibran is regarded with great esteem as an experimental poet and writer, both in literary and political sense. In his writing, he revolted against the oppression of women and the tyranny of corrupt rulers and called for freedom from the Ottoman rule. However, one of Jibran's everlasting legacies is his innovative style, which left an indelible print on the imagination of young Arab poets and writers everywhere. He was able to pioneer a new romantic movement in Arabic literature during the 20th and 30th of the 20th century against the dominant classical forms and conventions. He single-handedly revolutionized Arabic prosody and craftsmanship, and his influence on the writings of Arab major poets like Sa'id Aql, Adonis, and Ins al-Hajj is far more reaching and rather overwhelming. Jibran Khalil Jibran died on April the 10th, 1931 in New York City. The cause of his death was tuberculosis, which Edgar Allan Poe, another great poet from Boston, called the Red Death. Jibran expressed a wish to be buried in Lebanon. His wish was fulfilled in 1932 when Mary Haskell and her sister Mariana purchased the Marseilles Monastery in Lebanon, which has since become the Jibran Museum. In one of his poems called Sand and Farm, published in 1926, Jibran wrote, "Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it so that the other half may reach you." It has certainly reached John Lennon of Beatles, who used this line in his song Julia in the 1968 album titled The Beatles.
Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it just to reach you, Julia, Julia.
Jibran was considered universally the virtuoso of mental and emotional journey into the human soul, delving deep into the sphere of a human consciousness, where imagination and God reside harmoniously. Like Coleridge and Emerson, whom he also read and loved, Jibran declared his mystical admiration for nature and made rivers, suns, mountains, valleys, and rocks echo his most inner feelings. In his home country Lebanon, where his soul is resting now, the cedar trees grow greener around his grave, like a nighttime bed for those emigrating phantoms and visions Jibran often summoned in his poems and short stories. His memory flashes bright and big in every horizon, across time and place, wrapped up in evening air and perfumed with the ever-spreading fragrance of his prophetic and illuminating masterpieces.
سفينتي بانتظاري فالوداع بشوق عظيم إلى بلادي فالوداع يا أبناء أرسليس الوداع.
Do not love half lovers. Do not entertain half friends. Do not indulge in works of the half-talented. Do not live half a life, and do not die a half-death. If you choose silence, then be silent. When you speak, do so until you're finished.